Let's get started. I think everyone can see my slides. Yeah, I see some head nods. So for some of you, this is a little bit, this one slide is a little repetitive, but just to let you know, Seth, that we are focused on companies who are trying to have either social impact or environmental impact primarily. And social impact can mean healthcare, it can mean education, it can mean social justice. And we're also very supportive of teams that have a diverse co-founder, either a woman or a person of color who have been underrepresented in the past by the financing community. And we've now grown to 53 angel investors. We are a network of individual investors, not a fund. So each angel makes their own investment decision. And we've invested almost $6 million now in 25 companies and have chapters both in Austin and in Dallas. So how do we define impact? I mentioned this already, so I won't go over that again, I guess, but yeah. So we're going to talk about what are the real challenges the early stage companies have in measuring impact. And then we'll talk about some tools that are helpful to those companies. And last, maybe the most fun part, give you some examples of investments we've made and how we thought about their impact. And again, please interrupt with questions, comments. It makes this a whole lot more enjoyable for Juan and I to not to be talking into a black hole. So what are the challenges? Well, the first thing I would say is that there's people talk about impact, often talk about 3 or maybe 4 bottom lines. And we care about 2 of those. Obviously, the financial results are important to us, and also their impact. The impact created by their primary business mission, not some sort of secondary effect. So those are the 2 that we look at very carefully. We don't look at what people would generally call ESG, which is often applied to public companies. You'll see a lot of public company portfolio managers, mutual funds saying that we're an ESG fund. And they're looking for companies that are environmentally responsible, treat their employees well, and are just good citizens in general. And boy, these companies we invest in are so small, 2 to 5 employees. ESG is the last thing on their mind at this point. They're trying to figure out how to survive another 2 months. And so we do look at their impact mission and their business potential. Questions, comments? Someone just joined, I think. Let's see. Maybe not. Okay, so Dick just joined. Hello, Dick.
Greetings.
So impact measurements are challenging, especially when you're dealing with soft measures like, am I feeling less upset today than I was yesterday? Am my blood pressure a little bit better today and yesterday? And what caused that to be better? All those kinds of social impact measurements are hard to make. They're generally easier to make in the environmental space because you can talk about less CO2 put into the atmosphere, or water being cleaner, or less natural resources being used. And so that's sort of the general environment that these companies are dealing with. They want to have social impact, but how can I measure that? And the challenge is that because they're not yet in the marketplace, they don't have any data, they can't really show causality. Causality means that we know because we took these specific actions that it caused a result. Healthcare improved in terms of a lower incident of COVID because they used our brand of mask. Well, that would be very hard to show. You have to do some kind of high quality study, double-blind study with different people wearing different types of masks to show that. And so, at the bottom of the scale is where most of these young companies are at. They can get some expert opinions, or maybe there'll be a single study somewhere, and that's the world these companies are living in. questions or comments? So pragmatically then, how can we deal with impact? Because we're impact investors. And as Juan and I are fond of saying, because we're a network of individual investors with 53 angels, we probably have 53 different ideas of what impact means. If we had a fund, it would be more tightly focused. But so one of the things we do as a network is that we ask them to propose impact measurements when they apply to us. And often the qualities of these measurements are not very good, but it's a starting point for discussion. And we want their pitch deck to also explain those measurements. And we want them to agree to give us measurement data on a quarterly basis along with their financial data. And if we actually got fund them, we'll negotiate those metrics a little bit more, potentially try to get some which are more meaningful, more easily measured. You know, if you have these big grandiose things on improve healthcare, how do you measure that? If you're going to say something more specific, we're going to decrease the dropout rate from high schools, then you may be able to find a way to get some data on the dropout rates from those schools, though it's often hard still to show causality. So what do we look at first? It's really simple. We want the company's primary business mission to be impact, not a secondary effect. Oh, not that we're going to give 10% of our profits to charity. You know, we had a company come to us that had a really interesting platform to be used by company recruiters. And they had codified in their platform the best practices of Facebook and Google. And so this would help small companies be just as effective as those big guys in recruiting the best talent. And they said, oh, by the way, you can use this tool if you want to increase your number of diverse employees. So we're an impact company. And our impression was, no, not really, because you're a general purpose recruiting platform company that might be used somewhere, sometime for impact, but you're not an impact company. And so sometimes we'll have companies, because they know they're applying to us, will kind of spin their pitch deck pretty hard for impact. And we also just go back and look at their homepage and say, does their impact mission really come through clearly on their homepage? Chris and Gwen, you have some experience with looking at impact companies. You have a different take on this, or?
No, actually, I really like what you're saying, and I think you made a really good point about the fact that it's a network, not a fund, where a fund might be able to really get into a niche of impact and really start working to track it, and that's not what your group is about.
Yes, that's true.
I'm fine with where you are at the moment.
Good. So the second part of this, what we look for is as much information that there's efficacy. You know, it's a term
Bob.
that's used. Yes.
This is Juan. Sorry, I was muted for a second, but I just wanted to jump in and give a quick comment that I was thinking about as you were going through this. Is that you know, you mentioned how a lot of these young companies have these issues and they're not thinking about ESG, they're thinking about 2 months. And I think about, you know, our double bottom line that we look at. They are also looking at their financial side just like this. So a lot of companies we look at either are very early in revenue or have no revenue, and so the metric or the kind of the hurdle that we're trying to put in front of them, the test that we're trying to get them to pass is, if you don't have revenue, or if there's not a lot of history of revenue, help us get to a place where we believe that you have a clear path to revenue, where a clear path to revenue makes a lot of sense. And it's the same thing for impact.
Yes, thank you. And so the second thing we look at, you know, efficacy. I love that term. It's what's used in the medical profession for a new pharmaceutical or a new medical procedure or a new treatment regimen. And, you know, we want them to convince us that they will be effective in delivering impact. it's not just a nice idea. Some of the young entrepreneurs have the best intentions, and they say, wouldn't this be a good thing to do for the world? And they can't convince us that what they're going to do is really going to have the intended result on impact. And so we're looking for as much as possible for them to convince us of efficacy. We'll talk some more about that as we go through here. So, before you have a company launched, how can you demonstrate efficacy? There's a number of approaches. One is that you can write a theory of change. A theory of change is used very extensively with nonprofits looking for money from foundations. We'll talk some more about that. And if a for-profit company has actually written a theory of change, we say, wow, they get it. We almost never see that. Sometimes they can get some proxy data. They say, here's a university study that said under this environment, this kind of impact result occurred. Or maybe some other kind of foundation had that kind of proxy data. Or they may have actually had a little bit of a pre-release test they perform that can show that. So that's kind of where they're at in terms of pre-launch. Now, if they're thinking about impact in the right way, they can do a lot of things post-launch to collect data. They can say, let's do a survey of our beneficiaries before we launch and they use our product or service, and then go back and do a post-use survey and try to measure the differences and the impact. Or they can say, we're going to compare the results from our offering to that of a competitor offering that's trying to have the same impact, and seeing if one is giving better results. And they may, in fact, have like a control group where it's like a double-blind medical trial for a new drug. But I would say that without business results, there's zero impact, zero efficacy. So they go hand in hand. If the company can't deliver a product and survive delivering that product to beneficiaries, there's no impact. And so we do, as Juan was saying earlier, we try to understand both the bottom lines carefully. Questions, comments? So there's a number of industry tools out there which are helpful. And we'll go through a few of these here. The theory of change I mentioned before has 4 sections. The first one, what is your intent? What are your goals? What's your mission? We want to solve world hunger. We're going to provide food to millions of people. The activity is what you do internally, the concrete steps you take to get ready for that. We're going to develop some educational programs around education and nutrition that can be delivered to third world farmers that will help them be more productive, for example. And then the output is the number of people you actually reach, number of farmers you educate on these kinds of programs. So now, intent, activity, output, the goal is to actually have an outcome. So the outcome would be, we're going to measure the quality and the quantity of food available to people serviced by these farmers and how that impacts their health. Maybe it's fewer miscarriages, maybe it's other things that impact. And so it's very easy for our companies usually to talk about outputs. It's much harder for them to measure outcomes. Comments or questions? One of the things we ask for is to identify which of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are the ones the areas you're acting in. These goals are well known by everyone in the impact community. And sometimes a company can be actually affecting more than one. So if you're zero hunger may also have a good health impact. Clean water could help health also. So we say, tell us which of these of the 17 goals you're addressing. What's the primary one you're addressing? this is a very interesting catalog here. Iris Plus is an industry consortium that's put together a list of potential impact measurements. And it's organized as a catalog where the first level search in the catalog, you say, which of the UN sustainable goals are you working on? That takes you down a decision tree where the next question is, what's your impact theme? And then that takes you to the next decision level. What is your strategic goal? And then you get to this list of suggested metrics. And so in this case, we have the UN goal being good health. The theme is providing access to quality healthcare. The goal is increasing consistent supply of essential products and services. And you can read the kind of metrics they suggest. So we ask our companies to go through this exercise of going through IRIS and report back what metrics IRIS thinks they should be reporting on. Questions, comments? Another useful tool is the Impact Management Project. They talk about the 5 dimensions: what outcome, who experiences the outcome, and are those people underserved part of the community? How much outcome? Are you helping a few people to live as opposed to die? That's a dramatic impact for a few people. Are you helping everyone in the world to feel slightly happier at 2 a.m. tomorrow morning? Well, that's a small amount of impact, but a huge number of people. And so there's, we want to see as many people as being impacted with the most possible impact per person. It's a way of thinking about it a little more quantitatively. So how much happens? And what did you actually contribute? What's your efficacy? Maybe other people are trying to solve this problem and doing a better job of solving it than you are. And what happens if we don't solve this, address this impact challenge? So another interesting framework, the big 5. The good news is that there are some consultants out there who help startup companies think about their impact. And so if a company really is focused on impact, they can go to the SDT group, the Social Impact Projection group, the Factor Impact group, and they all have various programs that help them quantify. The Social Impact Projection tries to define how much impact is being delivered for each revenue dollar. And so then as your revenue scales, you can project how much impact is scaling also. Maybe easier in the area of environmental than others. And the other groups also have various programs they use. These programs don't work well if the investors say, go do this. These programs work well when the company says, I want to do this, and it's their idea. Questions, comments?
Bob, just out of curiosity, how many of the people that have applied have touched organizations like this to do a systematic build before getting there? Or is it something that the light goes off when you start asking the questions?
I'm not sure that it's very small, very, very small of those who have applied having used one of these groups. And we do know that they have some business, each of these groups, so I know they have some traction. But yeah. So there's some more references here for various groups. You can download this webinar from our website, and you can see all this information. Okay, so let's change gears here, and Juan and I are going to share our experiences with investing in some of these companies and who we invested in and who we did not, where the do not was really tied to their impact projections. So here's a company we funded, Flowbelow. They added aerodynamic fairings around the drive wheels of these long haul tractor trailer cabs. and put special hubcaps on, which reduced drag and increased fuel efficiency by 1.5%. So that has a direct impact on CO2 put into the atmosphere because they use less fuel, also conserves fuel. And pretty easy to define those metrics. This is actually our first exit. They got acquired for a 2.7 return dollar on dollar, about 35% IRR. So that was exciting for us. 117 Media, going from the environmental space over to the clean tech, to the social impact side. They have a mobile app that they can put in the hands of youth who are emotionally upset. Maybe a boyfriend broke up with a young woman, maybe parents are getting divorced, maybe someone's being bullied. And they can measure at the beginning of a session on this mobile app how the youth is feeling emotionally, how upset they are. And they go through a long kind of, tell us about what's going on. Here's some advice for you. There could be, in some cases, actually a counselor behind an avatar. After 20 or 30 minutes, at the end of the session, they again ask the students to describe how they're feeling emotionally. And they can generally see a reduction in anxiety or anger or whatever in these youth. So, there are some measurements they can make directly on the app, but it's hard to show, like in a school setting, that there's less disruptive incidents in the classroom. There may be less disruption in the classroom because of this, but no one's measuring that. Teachers are not reporting, today I had 4.7 disruptions in my classroom, yesterday was 4.8, so I'm doing better. You may be able to get some decrease in absentee rates or graduation rates, but what's the causality? Again, the causality is hard to define. That it was your tool, your platform that actually led to those decreasing absentee rates or increased graduation rates. Questions, comments? We invested in this company because the team had a huge amount of domain experience in this area, and I had data from earlier platforms that showed that their stuff worked with students in terms of the before and after measurements of emotional state.
Were they able to sort out the Hawthorne effect for this?
Tell me some more about the Hawthorne effect.
Industrial engineering concept. The fact that people take interest in it improves behavior.
I'm sure they were not able to sort that out. Yeah.
It happens in the workplace. You actually get productivity improvements just by taking an interest in a production line environment. Yeah. And you can go back and put the old process back in place and it'll improve again.
That's great. Yeah, I think it would be hard for them to know that, but that's interesting comment. And if that's what it takes to improve the social emotional well-being, the Hawthorne effect, I'll be excited about that too.
Yeah, you can actually create success by just keep changing things.
Right. I mean, they do offer a lot of self-help. If you're being bullied, here's the kind of things you might want to do, for example. And they've also been able to red flag students who are potential suicide cases or potential school violence cases. They've been able to say, oh, here's a red alert. Someone act on this. A company
So,
we did not...
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
So the impact metrics on that previous organization, they weren't that strong, but there were other factors in your knowledge about the organization that led to encouraging investors to participate?
Yes, because of the experience of the team, and they had a lot of experience with both some mobile apps and some school apps where they had data they thought demonstrated that their platform can work. We love the mission, and we thought the team was very capable. We invested, and that's sort of the theme you'll hear all through here. They have enough evidence, and we have enough confidence in the team that we invested. a company we did not fund. It was I could say it in sort of a negative way, yet another dating app. But their differentiation was that your first date had to be volunteering in a nonprofit. And so we thought, well, that's good. Nonprofits always need volunteers, but can you convince us that those volunteers go back again and again to the same nonprofit? Can you convince us that you really kind of changed the couple's attitude towards being helpful citizens in the world? So we said, yeah, this is not an impact company. It's a dating app, the gimmick. So we did not invest. Scriptly RX offers a prescription discount card. Anyone can take into a pharmacy and get a discount on their medications. And Chris and Gwen heard them pitch at your recent event in Dallas.
Yep.
And there are other companies with discount prescription cards. And we invested in this company because we thought that it's an important problem to address. And they were really focused on people who are underinsured or non-insured, and they had distribution partners like food banks to get the cards out there. So we thought competitively, there was no huge difference between them and competitors, but their market focus was a differentiation. They're going in the markets that the other players wouldn't find to be financially lucrative to go after potentially. And so that's why we invested in them. Questions or comments? And this is also a young African-American male, a millennial. And we also, like the fact that it was a underserved group. And what the company with the mobile app was also 2 women about my age. So they're also in a disadvantaged group, underrepresented group because of their age and because of their sex.
Yeah, Bob, I really liked this organization when we reviewed it for the pitch for Social Venture Partners. I'm not sure if our committee really understood the connection with the food banks. And I love how you're just explaining it now about the market of disadvantaged users. And now it all makes it clear. But I felt like maybe they were leaving that market focus out. Well, when they talked about it to us. Just, it's kind of an interesting side note.
They have done some pivot. They're doing some pivots that puts less emphasis on that, which is why they spoke to you the way they did.
I'd pick that up. The thing that had me mildly concerned was efficacy. I actually ran some drug prices through their website and through GoodRx, and they were more expensive than GoodRx on everyone I ran.
And I know that I've done those experiments too, and it's variable. Sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're lower.
Yeah, I must have just picked a bad group.
Right.
But yeah, which was then saying, well, if you're trying to get the best deal for somebody in a food bank, is this the best app to have picked? It was,
yeah. So, what's interesting about GoodRx is that they have a really large marketing budget. But the other part of the story for Scriptly RX is that Danny, the founder, was working at the Houston Health Department, and GoodRx came in to pitch, saying, "Houston Health Department, please distribute our cards." And they just weren't capable in terms of their marketing mindset of talking to either nonprofits or government agencies in a way that made sense. And Danny actually won that contract from the Houston Health Department and started Scriptly RX to fulfill that contract. And so there is part of it is the ability to market successfully to groups who can be good distribution partners that he demonstrated that GoodRx doesn't care about because they're going after the mass consumer market.
Yeah, I'd seen that. I'd found a couple of his pitches online in archive sites. Yes. So I'd seen that bit of it. But to say that the sample I'd done was, I'd obviously picked some bad ones, but Yeah, the concept of what they were doing was very good.
Thank you. College Consortium is another company we invested in, and their basic observation is that a number of smaller universities, either small four-year schools or junior colleges, can't offer all the classes they need for their students to graduate on a timely basis. They may have a nursing program and only offer, half the classes every 2 years. And so students who miss one of those classes have to wait another year or two to finish out their degree. And so what they're doing for those smaller schools that teach classes and make them available online. Now, this is a pre-COVID statement. Offered online, can have those classes offered to other universities or other small schools, so that the other schools have a complete set of offerings available all the time. So if you need Algebra 2 to graduate and it's not going to be offered at your junior college for 2 years, you may not finish your degree. You may just drop out. And so they've been very successful. They just closed another round of financing after we invested, and yeah, they're doing well. Now, they found it was easier to get colleges to sign up as teachers as opposed to users, for obviously because the schools get revenue out of teaching. But so their big challenge has always been getting the number of students signed up, keeping a balance in this marketplace.
Did they ever get into the coordination to remove duplication so that they could expand the network?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Well, clearly people were looking to fill in the gaps.
Yes.
Was there anywhere where, to become more efficient, colleges dropped a course because it was available elsewhere?
That's an interesting question. I have no idea. Yeah.
Chris is one. That's an interesting question, and we chatted about it a little bit with them. And their thinking is that the feedback from the colleges is that they want to attract students. So dropping courses is tough for them because they want the kids or the students to come to them, for whatever particular programs that they think are strengths to them.
And also the faculty member could be affected in terms of their salary, because a lot of these smaller schools may be more, the compensation may be tied to activity levels and not an annual salary. A company we didn't fund, we love the technology. This is a company that's saying, if you look at all these high-rise buildings built in the 60s and the 70s, most of them have single pane glass. And in fact, the city of New York is requiring those buildings to be retrofitted with more energy efficient glass. And there's a number of ways to do that. You can go in and remove the old windows and replace them either from the outside or the inside, but that's very costly and disruptive. And this company has a technology where you can simply use even window washer quality people, and you go up the side of the building with a window washer platform, and you basically use an adhesive and stick another pane on the outside. And it's so easy to apply. And we said, it helps. The environmental impact is significant. But at the time we talked to them a couple of years ago, they didn't have a lead customer willing to reskin a building. The building owners were very cautious. They did not want to be the first one to do that. And so we were really concerned about market acceptance. And they'd done like 2 buildings. They'd done 3 windows in one building in this town and 3 windows in another building in this other town as proof of concepts. That was it. So we didn't invest at the time. Now, maybe if they come back to us raising more money, we'd be really ready to invest now, because I think they've gotten some good traction since then. Binary Bridge is a company up in Minneapolis, run by a woman who basically has a electronic medical records system for use by medical missionaries like Doctors Without Borders, who go in once a year to a certain area and need in a way to work with limited infrastructure around them to collect information on all the patients, have that accessible a year later. In some cases, there may not be internet access where they're at. So you can't do anything in the cloud. You have to collect it all locally and then upload it later to the cloud. You may have people who don't know how to spell their name who come in as patients. So you have to have some way of, through photographs and phonetic kind of tools, identifying who the patients are. And so, you know, their impact statement was twofold. One is that they're going to improve overall long-term quality healthcare, because these medical missionaries can see year to year what was said a year ago, what's being done now, and see some longitudinal kind of information. Secondly, they're going to help these NGO medical missionaries have more effective tools for reporting back to their donors their impact, so that the medical missionaries can raise more funds more effectively. And you know, we were extremely impressed with the woman who was running the company. She just on top of everything, very transparent, open, easy to work with, listened well, smart. She had written a lot of the code herself for this platform. They had some revenue, and we invested. Comments, questions? A company that we did not invest in, it was an Austin company, a really impressive woman CEO. And there's a skin condition where if you have a darker complexion, sometimes you get blotches and you lose your pigmentation color. And when you have these blotches, especially in the visible parts of your body, like your face, it can be really, you know, shameful. People feel embarrassed, or, you know, they don't have, it hurts their self-confidence being out in public. And there is a procedure to cure this, where doctors take some of the healthy pigmented skin from some part of the body, maybe a leg, and they grind it up and they treat it, and then they abrade the light colored patch, slap the cells on there, bandage it, and the cells start growing there in the skin. It's an effective treatment, but it's hard to do that preparation work of the cells. So it's not very widely used. And so this company basically set up a lab to do that prep. Doctors will take a sample, FedEx it overnight to this lab. They process it, send it back out the same day to the lab so it can be applied to the patients the next day. And really expands the number of dermatologists who are willing to do this procedure, or able to do this procedure. We thought it was a really interesting medical tool, technique, and advancement. However, at the time, there was no reimbursement codes from insurance, Medicare, or Medicaid for this. So they had to only offer this to self-payers who are willing to pay $3,000 for this treatment. So we said, okay, this is a very limited market benefit in terms of the number of people who will be served. Until this can be made available to everyone on a reimbursement basis, it's not going to have a broad social impact. So we almost invested. We decided at the last minute not to. Their lab is up and running. They're making great progress as a company. And if there's reimbursement codes available, then we would probably take another look at this. On the dot, okay, this is one that the social impact is really hard to talk about, but it was basically empowering business women. It was a diversity impact decision. Central Texas Angel Network and others were funding this group. This founding woman had been running Austin Women's Magazine for 15 years as a publisher, a print magazine. And she wanted to take this same kind of stories about successful business women to an online platform. And so she was developing a daily podcast that women could listen to 4 minutes in the morning while they're getting ready to go to work. That would be inspiring to them. And because there was a number of folks who were interested, this goes back to 53 angels, 53 different ideas of what impact means. Some of the angels said, you know, supporting women in the business world is important, period. We want to invest in this. And so we did. Now they've since pivoted, because they found there's no way to get people to pay for the podcast. Everything on the internet is free. So they've taken this back into a corporate environment, selling into diversity managers, diversity inclusion managers, not just for women, but for people of color and other ethnic groups, various types of tools. And they have a total now corporate solution for diversity managers. So yeah, the gender lens was what we used to make that decision. A company we didn't fund, in the state of Texas, there's all these, the TEA, Texas Education Agency, and various other kinds of regulations and rules, and school systems spend a lot of energy in doing reports for the regulators at the state level. And this team had a long experience as consultants helping those school administrators do it more efficiently. And they built a platform to automate that. And their social impact statement to us was, we're going to free up time for those administrators so they can now spend it on improving education as opposed to doing reporting work. And we said, well, maybe that'll happen that way. And by the way, it's kind of a small market, and what you do for Texas doesn't work in Minnesota, maybe, because the rules are all different. So love the team, very capable team, lots of experience, but we weren't sure that the impact really was going to be real. Okay, that's some examples we gave. So Juan, if you have any other things you want to add about any of our companies or.
No, I think it's really illustrative of what we talk about, which is social impact is for good or bad. It's a new field. It doesn't have hard and fast definitions. There are some guidelines and guideposts, but as you can see from the companies we decided on and decided not to invest in, it's still being formed, and there's a lot of different opinions.
So I think that Chris and Gwen, you're familiar with these other angel networks. In fact, Chris, you've seen these other two webinars already. Gwen, I'm not sure you have, but they're available online, and we'll repeat them again after the first of the year. And there's these books we've mentioned before, which are helpful books. So you've seen those before, so I won't go into those again. And the question is, what was most interesting to you? What was most helpful? What would you like to see more of? What would you like to see less of?
Hey, Bob Cepede, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. Has some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
No problem. You can say SEP, S-E-P. That's fine. Just to make it easy.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Sure, no problem. I have a few questions. I just left them at the end. So first question is, do you focus on innovation and new technology projects only? Or your business forum, do they invest on any type of projects?
So typically we invest in someone who has some kind of technology base because they can scale revenue more quickly. If it's a services business, then often the revenue scales with the number of service workers they hire. And so if as investors, we want to see these companies get to a merger or an acquisition, or maybe a public offering of stock at some point. And companies who have a product technology means they can generally scale across a broad market very quickly. If they're having to hire people in every city to deliver services, their revenue scales much more slowly, and it's harder for them to get acquired. So yes, most of our companies have a product or technology, have a base behind them.
Okay. That kind of brings me to my next question, because my understanding from what I saw, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you focus on social return on investment more so than bottom line. So that kind of is in contrast with what you're saying right now, right? So if you're focusing on impact, then why would you only invest in companies that will bring in more, they can exit or they can bring in more revenue?
Juan, you want to answer that?
Yeah. I apologize if that was your understanding of the the content, but we are focused on both of those bottom lines equally. And not only does revenue and business growth come faster with technology, but so does social impact. So if you think about, you know, some people would argue with me, but I think Tesla is a social impact company in terms of its CO2. Well, part of the reason it's grown so quickly is because it's based on a technological base, you know, and a lot of modern companies are. So we don't focus on one or the other more or less. We focus on both, and we think that there's a good synergy. Like the more business you can create for yourself, and the more good you can create for the world, if that is your goal.
This is Chris, just a great Seb, have you been through 201 and 202?
I haven't, no. But
as an external person, both those are heavily financial. So this is coming in as number 3. If you'd seen the first 2, I don't think you'd have had that opinion.
Sure. No, I understand. It's more of a question about curiosity. So do you invest in companies abroad, or is it US focused or Texas focused companies?
It's primarily US focused. We are considering our first international company right now, a company from Ireland. And our hesitation is that we don't understand international laws around investing. We don't understand, you know, all the implications, how do companies get structured, what are the, you know, all the aspects of that. So generally we like, if an international company is planning to enter the US market and have like a senior sales team here, then we will look at those. If they're planning to be only third world or non-US, I should say, with no connection to the US, then we just don't know enough about what we're getting into.
Sure, I understand. And what if some of those companies have already been invested in, like they raised funds through, let's say, Rotary International, which is an American US-based company, because I work closely with Rotary, and we raised several donations through the Rotary Club in the UAE for projects that are based here. So if it's I'll give you an example. We have Surge Water, which is a company that provides water pumps. They go to villages in Nigeria and Philippines, and they build these water pumps. So instead of people walking 2.5 hours to get to clean water, just to bring 1 bucket back to their village, they go in and they build these pumps. And every year we select a certain village when we go in and we do this. So Rotary works with us on those projects and fund them. So let's say that was just an example, something like that. So would that be of interest?
Wonderful mission, but you know, we are investing only in for-profit startup companies. We're not doing donations into nonprofits or NGOs. So yes. So I know there's some wonderful programs around the world to do, you know, water pumps in various third world countries. There's a big group in Austin that does that also, but that's not who we focus on. To make a return for our investors, you know, we need to have the company get to a merger or acquisition or public offering of stock, because we want to make a return on our investments so we can reinvest again in more companies. So we are not in the donation nonprofit world.
And what stage businesses do you usually invest in?
And usually as the first money they raise. So these are early stage.
Earlier stage.
There may be 5 employees, maybe 10, maybe half of them don't have revenue yet, and the other half have maybe $500,000 in revenue on an annual basis. So these are early stage companies. When they get past their early stage, then they may go out to venture capitalists to raise later money. So the angels come in generally before the venture capitalists do.
And how often do you review the pitches?
We operate on a quarterly basis. Our next application deadline is January 8th for a February 11th pitch event.
The reason I'm still on the call, I'm asking these questions because I work with several companies in the US. One of them, they work on affordable housing. And I actually am an employee of UPS, which is an American company. And I work with the UPS Foundation on a lot of social projects. So that's the reason I'm still on the call, although I know that you don't invest in this part of the world. But I work closely with our US Foundation.
So the Affordable Housing Company, you might encourage them to look at our website and they can self-choose if they want to apply for funding or not, because we have lots of information on our website that may be helpful to them. And we try
We're
to
based in Atlanta, so I'm not sure if that was still.
Okay.
Yeah, but I will still recommend, make a recommendation. Perfect. And Juan, just to go back to what you mentioned about Tesla. So we looked at electrical vehicles in this part of the world. This is just so I can share some information from different parts of the planet. In UAE, we have Expo 2021 coming up soon. And we, as UPS, we looked at bringing in our electric cars from Europe to this market. And one of the issues with electric cars is a source of electricity. So in the US or many parts of Europe, Nordics, the source is clean and green, so it's okay to, and Tesla definitely would be of advantage environmentally. But here in this market, it would create more carbon footprint to bring in electric vehicles to this market over this side. This is just something I wanted to share since you mentioned Tesla.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you all. It's been great. I'd love to attend more events and learn from all of you. And perhaps one day we get to work together at some point.
Well, it's very good connecting with you, and we appreciate. It must be very late at night there for you.
Yes, 11 p.m.
Yes.
So,
well, thank you for
kids in bed.
Thank you for your endurance.
As long as kids are in bed, then I'm okay.
Oh. Other questions or comments? Dick, you've been quiet this time. Do you have anything you'd like to share? You're muted. Okay. I'm not sure if Agnes, if you have any questions or comments?
Hi, yes, thanks very much for a very interesting presentation. I know I don't have questions. I mean, I was particularly interested in the metrics that you're using and that you were discussing. So thank you very much for sharing that.
You're welcome. And I'm not sure who contact maintenance is now. I don't recognize that name.
Oh, I don't know. How may I get back in touch with you? Because I kind of missed the beginning of your presentation.